Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. Today we're going to be wrapping up my Pan That palette for 2020. I have been working on one palette since October 2019 as a focus palette, and that is the Kat Von D Shade and Light Eye palette. And as I said, I started doing this project over a year ago now. I've been really focusing on using this and getting consistent use out of this palette. I didn't have an end goal in mind in particular, other than I really wanted to just see where the project took me, see how much progress I could make, and really familiarize myself with the concept of a Pan That palette because I had never done it in the past. This seemed like a really good option because it was a palette that I liked and I didn't seem to want to part with, and I didn't know how to part with it either. However, I didn't want to support the brand Kat Von D Beauty because it just wasn't a brand that I saw my values align with, and I don't know why I had this inner conflict where I couldn't seem to declutter it, but I really didn't want it to be a part of my collection. So I figured, okay, let's get as much possible use as I possibly can out of it for the next year or so and see where that journey takes me. I didn't know if it would even be a project that I would wrap up at the end of 2020 or if it would be over with sooner than later, but I am really happy I stuck it through, and I've been using this palette for the past year or so. Now, what I want to do is actually share with you the progress that I've made on this palette through the entire project, and then I'll share with you what the palette is looking like here at the finale. Here is what my palette is looking like to wrap things up. So things aren't looking all that different from my last update. I have actually finished off this shade right here, which is called Lucius, but otherwise no major changes in the past month. But as you saw, it has changed quite a lot since the beginning of this project, which I am so proud of, and I'm really happy to reflect on and to look at the sheer amount of progress and dedication that I made and committed to this palette for the past while. It actually is very eye-opening because from month to month, when I look at this palette, I don't see major progress. I don't really see massive changes in the palette other than when I've either hit pan or used up an entire shadow, but the sheer amount of progress and changes in this palette is pretty amazing, and I'm really, really proud of myself. But let's just talk about this in terms of from my last update. So in my last update, I did reflect on the fact that there weren't any major significant changes happening in the palette anymore, and that's simply because I have now really used up a good majority of this palette. So the amount of product that I'm using when I do reach into it is very, very minimal. I have only used up a total of 0.46 grams since my last update of this project as well. So not on par with my goal of using up a gram every single month, but of course, there were so few shadows in this that I really wanted to reach into, specifically this shade right here, which is called Lucius. I did really want to finish it off. I did set that as a goal in my last update, and I did finish it up only, I think, yesterday. And so today I used this shade right here, the white matte, which is called Liberatus. I used that today to set down my eyeshadow primer, which is a concealer. I used that to kind of set things down, and it was a good option. The dip in this shade right here, which is called Sytry or Sytry, I still don't know how to pronounce that, has definitely gotten deeper over this past month, but unfortunately no pan, even though I have been reaching for it literally all the time. I've been using it so frequently, but it is just so hard pressed and very, very pigmented. It just doesn't seem to go very quickly. But I am happy with where this palette is looking, how it's looking rather, and how much progress I made in the past year. So like I said, I am going to be decluttering this, and good riddance, honestly, because it has been quite an experience using this. I wouldn't say it was a bad experience, but I have come to learn potentially Pan That palette is not for me. I really get a lot more value out of doing my Pan Those Eyeshadows project pan versus a Pan That palette. However, this was a good way to actually use up entire eyeshadows for my collection versus simply hitting pan on things. But I just don't feel like it is as motivating and as exciting for me to watch a palette slowly change throughout the year. It just didn't really wow me and excite me the way that Pan those eyeshadows does. So seeing as this is the finale video, why don't we just wrap it up by talking about some of the numbers? I know a lot of you love numbers just like I do, so why don't we just talk a little bit about the weight comparison from the intro until now. So when I first started this project Pan, this whole palette weighed in at 222.02 grams, and today it is weighing in at 207.40 grams, which means I have used a total of 12.62 grams of product. So 12.62 grams of product has been used up from this palette, which is amazing. I feel like that is a very big accomplishment. I did have a goal of using up 1 gram per month. Now this project did run, I think, for about 14 months. So I didn't quite use the 1 gram per month, but that is pretty impressive using almost 13 grams of product in a project Pan. And in the introduction of this project, I did calculate that the advertised weight of this entire palette is 16.8 grams. So for me to use 12.62 grams of product through the project with the advertised weight being 16.8 grams, I think that's pretty impressive. I know sometimes palettes and makeup products in general do have more product than what is advertised, but it does seem pretty on par based on how much product is left in here. If not, there may have been more product than the advertised 16.8 grams. But for me to have used this for about 14 months and to have made that much progress, I feel really proud and I'm really excited about that. But I am decluttering this from my collection. I am going to actually film a mini declutter video as well right after filming this, and believe me, it's kind of bittersweet now. I am reflecting on my entire journey with this palette and getting to really know this palette, but also being able to multi-purpose it. It was a really cool experience, but I am definitely happy to say goodbye to it and to end and wrap up this project Pan. But that is everything for today's video. Thank you so much to all of you who have been a part of this project panning journey, this Pan That Palette journey over the last year or so. Thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone.